Welcome back to season 5, everybody. Colin and I are going to do something a little bit different this season. We are going to have a couple of episodes that are our more traditional format, which are going to be 45 minutes long-ish. Sometimes with interviews, sometimes not. But several of the episodes this season are going to be shorter and very topical. So hopefully you like them. We're just trying to experiment a little bit with talking
engaging
less.
Content.
Engaging content, also talking less. Yeah.
Yes.
To make it easier on us to create content for you. And so today we are talking about something that came up during the break between the seasons, which is the acquisition of G2 Track, which is a spend SaaS management platform owned by G2, previously owned by G2. They were acquired by BetterCloud, which is a SaaS management platform.
Yeah. One of the pioneers, one of the first true SaaS management
definitely
platforms.
One of the pioneers of that area. G2
Track
Track is also one of the pioneers of the SaaS spend management applications. If I recall, I mean, they were one of the very first ones I ever heard of, like back when it was just like Intello and...
was it Blissfully?
No, this is before Blissfully.
Wow. Really going back.
This is like circa 2017-ish. Like right when I first got onto the scene. But one of the things that G2 Track established early was that they were the type of spend management platform that targeted finance people.
Right.
Not IT people, finance people. And it's very interesting to me, as I was noting before we pressed record, it's very interesting to me that they were acquired by BetterCloud, which is a very IT and security focused platform. So we have this sort of combination of things happening here where we recognize that SaaS management isn't something that just finance people do. It's not something that just IT people or security people do. It is actually a cross-departmental effort.
Yep, which then also adds to the stickiness of that solution.
Absolutely.
If you have
more people are using it.
Yep, multiple departments.
Also, finance holds the purse strings, so if they use the thing and they like it.
Finance, sort of asset management. I know that's another department that might use something like this with the tracking and assignment of licenses, certainly from a procurement standpoint. It is interesting the number of these SaaS spend management that do solely market themselves towards the finance teams. And make it a real finance function as opposed to if you and I and our backgrounds always see everything with an IT administration background.
Sorry, that was a truck rolling by. Hopefully Jesse mutes that.
It was quite a truck.
Yeah, sorry. The windows are open. It's very nice today. I was going to say that my observation of that is that if you think about, especially like right now we're living in what I would call the post-startup boom.
Yeah.
Right? We had a bunch of companies that laid a bunch of people off in the last couple of years. Things were downsizing, investments down altogether. Like, I think it's bouncing back a little bit, but not yet quite. But when these companies started to come out, I suspect that the reason they were focused primarily on finance people was because they were also targeting small businesses and small startups that did not yet have IT teams.
Right. Yeah.
Because we all know that IT is like the 150th person you hire.
It is. There is a magic number. I was 59th in one company. I know of others that do wait until they get to that critical mass before they do their first.
They get all the way up to 500 before
they do
it.
Without an IT person? Wow. Yeah, it depends.
Yeah, it's insanity.
Depends how they're focused. But it's
That's
interesting.
True. Yeah, it depends on and it depends on who is willing to do that work, because it's not like that stuff doesn't happen. It's just it depends on who is willing to do the work in the meantime. And sometimes that's the founder team, right? I've known people that like the CEO is the person who handles that kind of stuff, or the CTO is the person who handles that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, like even in a small organization, you have sort of SaaS sprawl, right? People using whatever they want to use and spending money however they want to spend it and all that kind of stuff. So the earlier versions of the spend management platforms really made an effort to track a lot of those things. And G2, I assume, created G2 Track out of the database of SaaS
that they had. Yes,
that they have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're a Trustpilot, a Co-Radius, or Trust Radius, Copilot. No.
Yeah. The G2
Those
are the
things.
people.
The places where you put the reviews. And you see the alternatives and stuff.
I always associate them with Starbucks gift cards. They're always saying, do this review,
put a review in,
and get
for Amazon gift cards too now.
Get a $5 or $10 gift card. But yes,
I definitely reviewed Okta for a $10 gift card once.
Yeah, and I know a lot of startups rely, or emerging SaaS companies rely on those reviews and validation from either verified, publicly named individuals from organizations on their experience with those apps. So it was probably wise for G2 to utilize that product knowledge and build their SaaS management app out of it. What are you watching? Doors behind me move. It's a cat. It's not a ghost. So there might be a cat coming at any time. So you never know with these
That's
live
true.
podcasts.
No. I just realized I'm using the wrong mic for this recording. Can't do anything about it now.
Okay, it sounds good enough apart from the trucks. But the one
from the
thing,
background noise, yeah, that's why I was
background noise. Right. The one thing I have noticed looking at, obviously, with BetterCloud and G2 Track joining forces, becoming one, is that BetterCloud on their website have actually changed and updated some of the wording. It says, manage every app, every user, every dollar. So there is that.
Okay. So they are kind of leaning in
to the finance side. So, and it is, those of us who have known BetterCloud for a long time, BetterCloud did launch their own SaaS discovery part of their platform in 2018, which they called Discover. And it would discover, but what it would actually give you was limited and not particularly useful or actionable. And a lot of the features that admins had requested never materialized after 5 or 6 years. So I can see the business rationale instead of there's always the question. Yeah. Do you build or buy? And they've obviously decided eventually to go out and buy.
And the press release doesn't tell us much about how they intend to use the product, but I think we can tell from the changes to the website that they're really trying to integrate the data and the insights that G2 Track had into their platform as part of the Discover module, I would assume.
Because a lot of the other SaaS...
Maybe I'll be able to get a demo of it someday.
Yep. Yeah, I haven't seen the platform for a while since a change of position, but this does sort of put them in line and makes them more comparable to some of the other SaaS management platforms that are out there, like Zluri and some of the other emerging players that do this, that also focus on the spend as well as the automation part.
Because G2 was experimenting with the automation part too. They just didn't quite get there, they were very limited in their automation capability. So I think this is probably a best of both worlds for both of them, right? Like G2 Track gets the, the full functionality it needed to, really mature. And then also BetterCloud gets the insights and the extra data and all the stuff that they need. So I think it's going to be a good thing. I will say, Colin, like this is not a very common thing. Like, we don't see a lot of acquisitions in this space yet,
No.
with the exception of SailPoint acquiring Intello a couple of years ago now. I don't want to say several, but it's been a few.
Yeah.
With the exception of that, I don't think we've seen very much consolidation in this space.
There was another company, and name escapes me now, that did get bought and then shut down. Who was that?
I know Blissfully no longer exists.
Maybe it was them. Maybe they got bought by somebody and shut down.
Yeah, let me see.
It's probably bought by Cisco or somebody.
Yeah, Vendor acquired them.
Ah, right. There we go.
Yeah, so they were acquired by Vendor in 2022. But Vendor was basically the same type of thing. So I don't think that there's much that they acquired from Blissfully except maybe the talent. I would have
Yeah.
to.
Talent, code base, whatever.
Yeah. Blissfully was leaning on it was almost becoming like a service platform, interestingly. Like, that was its sort of lean, was they had a lot of features based around like being able to request applications, and
Right.
yeah,
Yes.
so there was a bunch of stuff like that. Plus, it had a couple of unique features which actually wouldn't be hard for anybody else to implement. But they tracked SOC 2 compliance and things like GDPR, and they would link to all of that kind of stuff as part of their app record, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. There is a growing number of these platforms that do build in automations that go into Slack or to Teams for requesting access to platforms, or requesting a license where you can sort of publish a catalog of approved applications,
Yeah.
and then you can go in and request.
And in this case, it was interesting because they were building it themselves within the app. So it wasn't necessarily an integration in that standpoint. So I thought that was interesting. Vendor is helps people like negotiate software.
Right. Is it almost like a group buy
Sort
where
of, yeah.
you
It
get like a
helps with a number of IT related procurement things. So it was interesting to me that, yeah, like, that's the spin Blissfully took on it, and then Vendor acquired them. So I think that Vendor was both looking to expand in that space, and potentially like Blissfully had some nice parallels there. But
right.
as an IT person, of course, I'm always for the platforms that like to do IT things, right? And create features
Yeah.
that help IT folks. But I
Yeah.
understand people
It
come at
is.
this from a variety of perspectives.
Yeah, and I think it is getting very difficult to um, choose the right platform. So many people have Okta as their identity, and then moving to Okta workflows is very simple. So then when you're picking and choosing what additional features you need for your management, and visibility, I think it's very difficult to try and choose, because they all do, as you said, even that other platform was trying to build out, or G2 Track, you're saying, was trying to build out its own automations. Everybody's
Everybody
wanting
has a lightweight
that.
automation thing now, which is one of the
Yeah,
things we talked
it's
about in the
the
early episodes.
it's that sort of stickiness of being embedded into the decommissioning process of your
Yeah,
workflows for your
being able to
life,
manage those licenses, not just report
your
on them.
user life cycle management, was the very big thing that a lot of people were talking about, and it's one of the key things that I remember BetterCloud were always talking about, of focusing on that user life cycle management.
Well, and it's interesting to me though that I we are seeing a level of maturity that I think addresses some something that didn't used to be true. So the thing is everybody uses SaaS apps, right? Whether you're a small business,
Yep.
whether you're a medium business, whether you're an enterprise. which means also that businesses of varying maturity levels also all use SaaS apps. So there are businesses out there that could benefit from a SaaS management platform, but they already have a significant number of automations in place using their own stuff, right?
Yep.
If they have Okta, maybe they're doing a couple of workflow stuff. Maybe they have their own server where they're hosting workflows that run, right? Yep. And, maybe those break often, but, whatever, right? Like, I think when you look at implementing something like this today and trying to target companies like this today, trying to like generate more stickiness and things like that, you have to realize that people are where they are, right? So there are people who are just getting started on this journey. They don't have anything really in place. They're doing a lot of things manually. They can benefit from a lot of those automations. There are people who just need to track stuff better, or they need to save time, right? Like they're tracking it manually. They need to track it automatically, right? Like, and that's shift, but they don't need a lot of the automation stuff, right? They might need one trigger to feed into their existing automations. And so that's the thing, is like, how do we get to a place where like we have companies that can address all these things? We're going to talk about this later in the season. We have an episode scheduled around some like antitrust news that affects, productivity spaces and stuff. But I do think this is one of the things, right? When we talk about acquisitions, we're also talking about consolidation, and like consolidation is both good and bad. I think in the SaaS management space, we've been expecting it and waiting for it for a while. We've named 3 acquisitions in the entire time that Colin and I have been working in this field that are significant, right? So there's still a lot of room for consolidation here.
Yeah, I'm surprised there haven't been more.
I am also surprised there haven't been
M&A
more
activity, certainly between the VC firms or the venture capital firms that and the private equity firms that generally like back or own. Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting because in the same time that this consolidation has not occurred, we're also seeing old players like Okta, right, start to dominate the field.
Yeah.
Because they just like they already had a lot of the stuff that you would build from scratch for something like this, and then they can just sort of feed it in that direction.
Yeah, and there's still a huge number of smaller players, coming out, doing
trying to differentiate themselves in the space.
Yeah, and sometimes they're not even really differentiating themselves. They're just sort of, it appears that they might be just
we can both agree
copying the model. There was a company I spoke to a couple of months ago. There was 2 people in the UK were like, hey, we can do this. And they, were doing...
They just created an app, that does basically the same thing that everything else does.
Yeah, brought in the logs and gave the visibility that a lot of these platforms do, and they were working to build out their business based on that. And when I looked at what they do, it was like, you're doing the same thing that like 3 or 4 other companies do, but obviously there is a lot of market out there, and some of these players, entrepreneurs, want to get big enough to be swallowed up by somebody else based on maybe not their tech or engineering, but maybe it's a cheap way of getting an expansion of their customer base.
I do think, like focusing on the ways that you can differentiate yourself in this space is going to be really important, because otherwise you're just going to be another face, right? So I think insights is one of the ways that you can differentiate yourself, by like giving new or robust insights. I think being able to action on them, unfortunately, is just kind of like meh, like that's par for the course right now. I think having a wide breadth, right? So like not just working with like your standard thing, but having like even a specific niche that you work with, and like you understanding the players in those fields. Targeting specific types of organizations is never a bad thing, right? Like there are things that target nonprofit and education, for example, for the unique challenges that they have. There are people who target specifically health organizations, for example, because of the unique challenges that they have. Like that's one way to do it. But I mean, I think we're still in a period where like we'd like to see some consolidation in the space, because it's kind of meh. And like there hasn't been any, You know what else? I also haven't seen a ton of AI insights in this space.
Wow. We could say that AI is new, but it's been around for 18 plus
And
months.
also, literally everybody and their brother has it.
Yes. Yeah. And then I think it's probably easier for um, the big players, the Googles and the Microsofts to add
Right.
AI into their
To do it
platforms
at scale,
rather
yeah.
than these platforms to utilize AI to, create
Yeah.
a prompt based
Mm-hmm.
actions or reporting in their platforms, because also as we know, AI is expensive, and these companies, the BetterCloud, the Zluris, all of the others, will be
They don't
reliant
have those kinds of funds, yeah.
on agreements with OpenAI or Google.
I think
And
though,
use
like when we're looking at the ROI calculations that SaaS management platforms tend to try and use in order to justify their own cost, AI is one of those things that like can save a lot of
Yeah, yeah.
time. Just being able to and it doesn't even have to be like the most advanced AI. Even being able to query something on natural language is
It is
a
is
big deal.
incredibly useful. Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
and some of the insights that it should be able to give, and some of the, uh, I guess, suggested actions that you should be taking on
Mm-hmm.
on user accounts. It'd be interesting to see, certainly on the SaaS posture management, the security side, where AI can be utilized there to get a clearer um, view of alerts and
Yeah.
actionable actions based on an alert that you might get on a security platform. I think a
Yeah.
lot of that will eventually get built in, but I think it probably comes down to resources. If you're maintaining your application and you're trying to build your user base and your customer base, and also revolutionize your platform at the same time, it's very, very costly. Um, so yeah, but I'm going back to BetterCloud and G2. I'm very interesting to see what they do, how they integrate it, whether it gets broken out into different SKUs. Some of the other platforms that we use, the collaboration platforms from Workspace or Microsoft, there are a ton of SKUs, and you can almost cherry pick
Yeah,
as best
and
you
BetterCloud
can
has
what
gone back
you.
and forth on a la carte pricing,
Yeah,
like some
so
other
I
players. So
yeah,
just depends.
and a lot of these platforms, it's just one SKU or a couple of SKUs,
Mhm.
and it does get very difficult. And I think there is a lot of feature overlap with when you have a couple of these, and certainly if you've got Okta workflows.
I
So,
will be
but yeah,
curious in the next couple of months to see how integrated G2 Track is into the BetterCloud platform. Because I think that's
yeah,
the thing that's interesting to me is that everything in the BetterCloud platform today is very, I guess, sort of tight into it.
yeah.
And so, like, adding something like G2 Track would be, I don't know, it'd be interesting. So, I'll try to get a demo in the next few months when they've made more progress with it. But
Yeah, yeah,
um,
because I can see it. It is track.g2.com is the G2 track. I wonder if they'll do track.bettercloud.com. I'm just going to type it in and see what
or
they do.
they'll just make it,
You
I
probably
don't know.
just get to a 404. Yeah, the site cannot be reached, but maybe that's what
Yeah. Maybe
they'll
they're working
move
on it.
to.
Well, so I mean, but yeah, it does take years to integrate things like that. So I'm just curious about the vision for it, and we can reach out to our contacts and figure it out. But it
Yeah,
is interesting to note that yeah, the space is ripe for consolidation always, but also I think new players in the space should just really be considering how they can differentiate themselves from the field
yeah,
because it's kind of boring out here.
yes,
To put it mildly. And I guess that's a wrap on episode 1.
yep,
Thanks
yep,
everybody for
yep.
tuning in.
Thank you, thank you. See you again
Thanks,
next time.
Tom.